was one of my mentors that said, son, Jacko, you're going to have a heck of a time with that accent, because I still had a couple of telltale gives, you know, the Long Island accent. It wasn't just like ball and mall, things like that. So I would go out at night and I'd work on my accent, you know, and I'd be in character all the time. Like, there was no question when you went out in public, you were going to be that character. So I went out to whatever the Roadhouse was, and I met a young lady, and she liked me, kind of an instant thing, and we started dating, and I thought, all right, I'm at a crossroads. Do I tell her I am not who I appeared to be? That I don't have the match at the Fort Worth Sam Houston Coliseum, and begged me not to do it. I said, well, am I supposed to tell the powers that be that I can't do it because my ex-girlfriend asked me not to? And she said, yes, just tell them anything. And I was up on top of that scaffold, and like my grip gave way. Like, even without the considerable weight gain, I was never really a great pull-up guy. And my grip gave way, and I hit that canvas, and man, I was in a rough way, and I'd fractured my wrist. And I saw her there crying at ringside, and she's like, will you take me back? And I was like, yeah, okay. And that night, I remember specifically, denying the request of her children, to have soft drinks with their meal. I was like, kids, I think you better have the water. It's free. So even in or out of character, I was always looking to save a couple dollars.
Talking about that scaffold match with Eric Embry, everybody has a style that they develop, as a wrestler. I was really influenced by Nature Boy Ric Flair. I just thought he was the greatest of all time. I know you're a big Terry Funk guy.
Yeah.
But how did you go about developing your hardcore style, which would basically last the rest of your career? How did you come upon that? Because I remember in Dallas, man, I was in the wrestling school. I was just now coming in, and watching you come into the sportatorium and run down that apron and dropping that elbow on the guy, that was the hardest wooden floor in the history of the business, and it might as well have been harder than concrete. But tell me about developing your style, because I'm sure when you were in school or learning to wrestle, you're doing the things in your backyard, but when Dominic DeNucci formerly trained you, he didn't train you to do that. So what drove you to come up with the style you created?
You learn the letters, and then you create your words, and you create your sentences, and then your paragraphs. And they said, if you want to do that other stuff, you can do that on your own. And so I did start adding those things. I basically took what I wanted to see as a fan and tried to make it come to life in the ring. And two of my biggest influences before I ran into Terry Funk, before I became familiar with his stuff, was Bruiser Brody and the Dynamite Kid. And I knew I could never be as wild as Brody, and I sure as hell knew I wasn't the athlete the Dynamite Kid was. But I thought, what if I could combine the brawling style with kind of that, using my own body as a weapon? If I could combine those two elements, and come up with my own patterns, that I might have something original to offer this business. And so what you saw in Texas would be kind of like me finding my own way, so that instead of being yelled at and lectured as I was in Tennessee, that when I got to Texas, I did have Eric Embry saying, whatever you want to do. I had these guys like Akbar going, baby, that's beautiful, you do whatever you want. Jack, that's just try things. Go out there, it doesn't matter if you fail, as long as you try. And I would, have to talk these veterans into maybe taking a look at it. I was about 265 at that time, coming out about 15 feet on that elbow, and no one had done those type of things before. Poor Al Grosnick, who ran the Sportatorium, was afraid that I was going to go through the floor. right? Because it was coming down with a lot of force at that time. But I felt like I needed to do those things. You know, structurally, maybe dropping an elbow off the ring apron from that type of height and distance wasn't a very sound idea, but I was building a reputation. Word was getting around. Guys like Jim Ross and Jim Cornette were seeing the show, and you know, I was kind of like building up a name, and that proved to be really helpful for me. You know, a year or so down the road.
You were working, and man, all the times that I worked in the ring with you, all of your stuff looked very vicious, but you were always a fun guy to work with because, one, you always wanted to have the best match on the card.
Yeah,
it didn't matter what night of the week it was, what town we were in, whatever, you were going to give 100%, but you were always very safe. Early in your career, when you were kind of learning the chops, coming out of DiNucci School before you turned into Cactus Jack, you worked with Dynamite Kid.
Yeah.
He hit you with a clothesline. I think it damn near knocked you out.
Yeah, it would be 3 weeks before I would chew solid food again. You know, I didn't know at the time as you wouldn't get those things checked out, but basically dislocated my jaw. And at that time, for about a year, maybe more, that was kind of like the Achilles heel. Every time I got hit on the point of the jaw, that jaw would come out of alignment, and I had a lot of trouble chewing. Thought maybe I'd have to, you know, give it up because I couldn't chew food very regularly.
But you're one of the toughest guys I know, and ultimately, after before or after you left WCW, you go to Japan, and dude, you're in some of the craziest matches of all time. Barbed wire matches with C4 explosives, working with Terry Funk, working with some of the Japanese guys, and I believe, and in my research, it was one night of events. I think you worked 3 times. You damn near got killed using C4 and explosive. I believe you made $300. And you said that was one of the most, your defining moments, one of your proudest moments in the business. Why?
Yeah. Well, it was...
Do you like pain? No, because back in the day, you would ask. I mean, I thought you did. Now, as we were talking backstage, I know you don't like pain.
Yeah. It was, it was something I worked through, something I accepted from the very beginning. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to learn to live with a lot of pain. You know, and then my definition of what a lot of pain was, we kept getting more extensive to the point where, you know, as I got older, it's like maybe some of these things were not a good idea. I never liked it. I'd say it motivated me. Like, I was a guy that, especially as I got older, I needed to be jolted into like almost an alternate reality, you know, like to become that character. For a while, the character, me and the character there was a time when there wasn't much difference between Cactus Jack and myself, right? And that was when things were really going smooth. And I'd say that was when, in the Attitude Era, you had guys who were really close to the bone. You know, whether it was you as Stone Cold, me as Mankind, Triple H, The Rock, you know, everybody's just basically themselves dialing it up, you know, to 11, you know. But as I got older and I wasn't really that guy, I would need those shots, definitely. I'm talking about, like, you know, whether it's a frying pan from Edge or, you know, cookie sheet with Edge, to kind of remind me that I was Cactus Jack. So I definitely responded to it. I wouldn't say I liked it, but I'm not sure I could have done what I did without it.
But you weren't seeking pain, but that was your desire and your MO, using your body as a weapon and then taking the blows as well. That was your style of satisfying the crowd, giving them every damn dollar's worth.
Can I jump off for a little bit about Dean Ambrose?
Yeah, I want to talk about Dean Ambrose, but I just got one more thing. Before we jump into Dean, I can understand that you wrestled, and I enjoyed wrestling. When you were doing the matches in Japan, were you married to your current wife?
Yeah.
So how do you call up your wife and say, hey, I damn near got killed, almost got blown up by a C4, and on top of it, okay, you can deal with it. How does your wife deal with it?
I think, in the interest of fairness, I think it was $400 a day.
Hey, when you count a buck like Mick Foley does,
and you add that up, it was about $3,000.
Now, how does your wife cope with that?
Well, we got to remember, my wife had already been on the receiving end of the phone call from Germany where I said, I've got some good news and some bad news. All right, what's the good news? I said, hey, I'm coming home early. She said, what's the bad news? I said, one of my ears is not going to be coming with me. So she was those phone calls, the one that... You know, this was very close to the time I got the phone call from WWE. Like, my dad picked me up at the airport after that, infamous tournament. It was then known as the Kawasaki Dream Tournament. It's become known in wrestling lore as the King of the Death Match. And I mean, I was in rough shape. Terry left. Terry came over, and people can read into this what they want. I like to make it so you guys can read between the lines. Terry just came up to me before that last match, and he said, "I wouldn't do this for many people." And then we went out there and did what we thought we had to do to kind of live up to the standards that people had set, and I was in a rough way, but didn't realize it because I still had that kind of post-match glow. And Terry left, in an ambulance to a hero's farewell, and then I did all the interviews, for a couple hours, and then I started realizing, man, I'm in need of some medical attention. Like hands need stitching, the good ear had nearly been lost, stitches above the eyebrow and in the head, and in all that, I had completely lost that a good deal of my skin had been burned, off my arm from that explosive. Like, didn't even ask about that. And then it was not until the next day on the flight that arm started turning colors, started drying out, started peeling. And when I got home, I walked in, we had a little apartment in Long Island, and my wife, first thing she did was she went, "Oh my God, like, was it a smoking flight?" And I said, "No." And I had my dad with me. I didn't want my dad to worry about me too much. And all she kept saying was, the smell is just awful. Like, what was it? Like, and then the moment my dad left, she goes, "Mick, seriously, what smells?" And I rolled up my sleeve and I went, "It's me, it's me."
Flesh was burned.
And a couple days after that, WWE had their SummerSlam, and I'm working an independent show, and I run into Kevin Nash and Scott Hall and X-Pac. And I was working a match with Sabu, and just all that skin just kind of came off,
Let's get back. Let's go back into that here in a little bit, because I know. Speaking of your family, you're talking about your wife dealing with all this. I understand that you've got a project coming up with the WWE Network involving your family.
Yeah.
What is this project?
Well, I could tell you, but I think it would be more beneficial if I introduced my co-star at this point. Please say hello to my daughter, if you've known since infancy. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to Noelle Foley.
Oh, hell yeah.
Come on in here, honey. There you go. Thanks, Noah. Sit here. You want to sit here next to Steve? Okay.
Noelle Foley, ladies and gentlemen. Noelle, welcome to the Shizzo. Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Here's the thing. I've known Mick for years, and I knew Noelle when she was a baby,
Yep.
and she didn't know me because she was a baby.
Yes, I did.
But now, all these years later, and here we are, a tall drink of water, 6 feet, beautiful. I would never guess that Mick is your dad. I mean, Mick and me are close friends. Welcome to the show. Tell me your thoughts and tell me the process and what's going on with the name of the show is Holy Foley. Am I correct?
Holy
yeah.
Foley. It's a great name.
We talked about Dude Love a little bit earlier. Mr. McMahon, you and I used to ride up the roads, and it had always been said that you couldn't really become a superstar in the company until Mr. McMahon was sold on you as a character, and then he became sold on Stone Cold. Even though I was doing some main events with The Undertaker, I'd done Mind Games with Shawn Michaels, still not completely on board until he found out about the Dude Love character, had found out that I'd wanted to be this guy and that I actually had footage of me being this guy. And Vince saw the footage and saw something into that and had a vision. In the same way, Vince saw some footage of my interactions with my daughter. So when it was announced in the press release of his very unique relationship with his daughter, like, it's nothing creepy. It's just she's 22 and we've had 3 arguments.
3 little fights.
3 little fights. Like there's some great chemistry. Like we play off each other. And Mr. McMahon saw this and he thought it was. I got the word that he's always ashamed that I'm going to do my Vince here for you, And the word I got was, it's just a shame that Mick doesn't like me. And wouldn't want to work with me because he'd think I'd ruin everything. And I turned to Kevin Dunn and I said, I think I like Vince more than he thinks I like him. And I was told, then you need to tell him that. And that was what changed my relationship with Mr. McMahon. And he said, so you'd like to work with us? Yeah, man, I would welcome that opportunity. And so Noelle is here. We're going to try to capture some of that magic in kind of a reality slash, drama comedy on the network.
Okay, that being said, then, Noelle, what is basically the gist of the show? What will it capture? Because I've known you for forever. You're beautiful. You've been doing some modeling, but now also other, maybe something in the business.
Yeah, we're not your average family. We do things a little differently. So it's going to be like him doing his thing and me doing my thing, me training to become a diva.
You are going to train to be a WWE diva. You're going to get in this squared circle, 20 by 20 ring, and wrestle.
Yes.
And make your thoughts are what? Because
I thought that the way I walked would be the greatest advertisement against it. But she loves it. She's been drawn to it since she was a little child. It was never something she phased out of. All my kids, I say that my home is accompanied by the sounds of human agony because my son Hugh has been having matches with his action figures. I just wake up to the words, let's take another look at that, JR. It's just the house we live in. It's just a wrestling home. And if she's dead set on becoming a wrestler, then I'm going to have a hand in her training, make sure that she gets trained the right way and that she has a shot at doing what it is that makes her happy.
Noah, you grew up with your dad being who he is and being around the business your entire life. So what are your aspirations? What are your goals as you go into the squared circle to be a diva? And will you try to mimic his style?
Am I going to follow his style?
Yeah, I mean, they're big shoes to fill, following in his footsteps.
I maybe won't follow his style because I don't want to walk like that. But he can teach me some good stuff.
But what was it like being a kid? Because I'm a father of two, and I was never home. Your relationship with your dad, you guys are so close, you've only had 3 arguments. What was it like growing up with him always on the road? And are you ready to get on the road and live that life? Because, as you know, it is a tough life.
Yeah. He did a really great job. As much as he traveled, he would, even if he had a day free, he would come back and see us. He would take us on the road. So he did the best that he could, and I think we turned out pretty good.
So, but it was okay when he was missing all the major functions because, he was on the road trying to make a living, pay the bills?
What was that?
So you were okay with him missing out on a lot of your milestone events as a kid growing up?
Yeah, because he made up for it, and you did your best.
I was always home on the 6 a.m. flight. I did the best I could, and they appreciated that. They appreciated they got to do things. I mean, even going on the Wrestle Vessel cruise, and we look back and here's these autographs from the Big Show from 1999. Eddie Guerrero signing to Dewey and Noelle. They were around it so much, it was just part of their lives. And there's always a trade-off, you wish you'd been home, and I have been home a lot more with the younger kids. But she sees, that's a good picture there, the Foley family there.
Yeah.
Pretty good photo there. And then she's done a lot of thinking about it, and it's really wrestling's kind of the love of her life, and she wants to give it her best shot.
So when will you guys start filming this project?
In about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's coming up really quick.
You've been around cameras all your life. Now invading, so to speak, your home. Are you down with that? You cool with that? Are you ready? Because, when the cameras start rolling,
we're ready to show people the real us.
Would you consider the Foley family to be quote-unquote normal, whatever normal is?
We're like a weird normal.
It's kind of like
define weird normal before I move on. What is weird normal?
Weird normal is we're your normal average family, but at the same time, having him, he's just a weird dad. We make weird noises.
Do you remember the Munsters?
Noelle, are you all as frugal as your father?
I really am.
So you're not a shopaholic?
I'm not, no. Maybe a shopaholic, but I get the
Get
best
the bargains.
deals.
All right, I dig that. All right, we're going to wrap this thing up. Noel, thanks for coming out. I'm
Well,
looking
thanks for
forward
having
to
me.
seeing the show. Good luck with the filming, and good luck with your in-ring career. It's going to be a tough one, as you know it. I look forward to seeing what you can do.
Thank you. And don't forget, Holy Foley is coming right here to the WWE Network this August. Yeah!
And you heard it first right here in Dallas, Texas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Noel. Let's talk a little bit about going back into the square circle, the Mankind character. How was that born? Who came up with that idea? Because didn't Vince initially want to call you Mason the Mutilator?
Yeah. When I showed up for my meeting there in Stamford, there was an illustration. I didn't know what in the world it was there for.
Talk to us about the meeting in Stamford, because if you're in the leagues coming up, if you're trying to be, get to the big leagues, and that's WWE, make no mistake about it, it was back then, it still is. Well, it's the only game in town now. But every now and then you get that invite to the house.
I never got the invite to the house.
Okay, or you got
So
the
I
invite,
didn't-
but you're going to see the man.
I was going to see the man, but I didn't
And you're
get...
pitching him or he's pitching you?
Did you go to the house?
I went to the house.
Ah, son of a gun!
Sorry
I'll tell you
about
what, there were a lot of guys who got the invite to the house who do not currently reside in the WWE Hall of Fame. So when I was there, when you were there was a list of 4 or 5 guys that were supposed to be the future of WWE, and you and I were not on that list.
No.
So Mr. McMahon had the ability to adapt, and at the time, and I told this story on the Cheap Pop special I did. Luckily, I didn't hear it until just about 2 years ago from Bruce Pritchard. But it seemed odd to me at the time that Mr. McMahon would want to take, a mask that had been made for The Undertaker when he had fractured his orbital bone. It was an idea, it was on the table for The Undertaker. They eventually went with like kind of a Phantom of the Opera type white mask look, which is actually pretty eerie. The Undertaker can make just about anything work for him. And had this look, and he had a reason for wanting to put me under the mask that he gave me. But it turns out that at a booking meeting in 1995, in the fall of 1995, that after JR had come aboard, Director of Talent Relations, and he began this steady push for me, slow, steady campaign, that finally Mr. McMahon slammed his hand on it. Damn it.